Hello, everyone. This week I had the great opportunity to have a conversation with Mike Verinder, Chief Advocate at Katalon, and also Mush Honda, Chief Quality Architect at Katalon, about AI trends in test automation. Let's go ahead and take a look at how this conversation evolved. Enjoy.
Hey Lucio, thank you for having us today. I'm looking forward to our conversation about all things AI. Let's see where this conversation takes us.
Hey, Lucio, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
How do you think AI is influencing the tech industry right now? And then if you can give me your opinion on how do you think it's influencing the software and the quality assurance industry?
Yeah, well, I would say that the tech industry is just absolutely ballooning in the last 6 months. But I think you're especially seeing a large segment of growth in automation in the QA space.
Can you tell us what are your thoughts on how AI is impacting especially the testing and quality assurance industry?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think in general, across all industries, if you step back and you look at it from that perspective, right? I think the biggest excitement for most people, or the scare, I should say, is all around will AI replace humans, right? That's the default mentality that I think the greater industry outside of tech is feeling right now, right? Whether you take it from, medical practitioners, whether you take it from law, whether you take it from like operational based businesses. I think the first reaction most people are having is, hey, this is robotic and hence it can replace us, because examples from ChatGPT seems to be talking about, oh look, if I ask a question, I get the answer which seems accurate, which seems correct, right? And that's the sort of the settled assumption that people are having. Contrary to that, in my opinion, I think, especially in the tech space, right, everything particularly around software, it's a very human centric process, right? Like our whole discussion of software development is human centric, at least from my perspective. To me, AI is going to be another tool in our tool set, right? I'm going to be able to apply it as another way of streamlining and impacting the work that I do, ideally remove the mundane stuff. And I think it's very true for me in the testing space, because I've always seen, contrary to the initial marketing ploy of products that talk about, oh look, you can do this without people, right? This is the same talk we had 15-20 years
Right.
ago. As I'm sure, Mike, you remember when we got into this industry, it was all about, oh, automation is going to replace human testing. And
Yep.
guess what? 20 plus years, we are still here. And we
Yep.
are the ones driving what the definition of test automation really is all about. So I think AI is going to be in the same way, where, yes, it can do a whole lot, but it can be dangerous at the same time if you just blindly apply it. There has to be human oversight and aspect. And I think the exciting part I am looking forward to is, how does this remove the stress and the pressure that testers in general feel in the
Mm.
human delivery process of software? Yes, we are in agile, but instead of being a team sport, unfortunately, it comes down to a select few that says, hey, you are responsible for the quality of the release. It gets to a lot of stress and pressure for the testers in the team. And I think AI and tools applying AI, the intelligent systems, should help alleviate that for us. Mike, what are
Great.
your thoughts?
Yeah, so AI has been around for a while, right? And as it relates to testing, the innovation around it has been rather limited. I mean, it's been there. I can recall a program I was making in my own org 5 years ago, but it's been there, but it's been very slow. And it when with the I guess the explosion in the LLM space really brought around. I don't know. Just made people think of AI in different ways
Yeah.
and what it could do, and that is now coming down to the product level. We're being able to see products really invest from a testing perspective and really improve the SDLC, which is kind of what I've always seen as the point of QA is kind of the tuner of the engine for SDLC, right? and that engine's running, but you always have to tune it a little bit. And so yes, I see the tools that are coming out now. I think will help energize efforts to be able to tune that engine a little bit better. I don't think it's a replacement for people. Yeah, automation's a great example, Mush. Automation did not replace people at all. In fact, you just built big automation teams. That's what most people did. So, yeah.
That's great. So let's jump into one of the things that I want to make the audience aware is that in this fire chat we will discuss topics like the current role of QA testers, what is going to be the impact of AI on QA, how is that going to transform how is AI going to transform the QA job, and what are the changes that we're going to expect in the foreseeable future, and a couple of other things. Backtracking a little bit before we jump into how AI is going to impact QA testing. Mush, you wrote a very interesting article a few weeks ago about the things that we think, or that you think that AI is going to help or is going to help out automate versus the things that will not. And so the audience know, I'll put a link below about it is an article that talks about how AI is reducing the bottleneck in software testing. So what are can you give me a quick overview of what are the traditional responsibilities of QA testers or quality engineers? And what are some of the challenges that they may be facing right now that makes AI enticing for them to say, okay, yeah, I want to adopt this technology.
Sure, absolutely. So, in any of the conversations I typically have, Lucio, is in terms of putting a 10-second pitch to trying to describe what testers do in a team, right? I usually go with the analogy or the statement that says testers are the glue of any scrum team, right? We are the bond that essentially brings together the requirements and the intent of what a product's vision or features need to be, and help the business owners, the product owners, be able to decipher that into the actual implementation from the software engineer's perspective. We are that glue that honestly keeps that team in sync, meeting those expectations, right? So to me, that is the core role of testers on a team, right? And honestly, while most of our teams do agile today, there are, I'm sure, several that do what I would consider as scrumfall, right? A mixture of the traditional waterfall methodology with agile practices. And yes, teams are getting better in adopting agile in its truest sense and processes, right? But at the end of the day, either way, we still continue to be the glue. The core responsibility, in my opinion, that exists with testers is for us to continue building confidence in the released software. I know a lot of teams think about testers as gatekeepers, the people who are solely responsible for the quality. I think none of that really, in the true sense, is accurate. To me, it's all about the confidence, right? If I am able to help the team raise that confidence in the software that gets released, that's the core definition, in my opinion, about the responsibility of a tester. And what that includes is you have to have the domain context, right? There's no way that you can be an effective tester if you don't understand what is the core intent and purpose of the features or the software that's going to be built. And that's why for any person joining a team, there is a ramp up period, right? You're going to try to understand what is the product all about, what is that domain about, right? The second area, which I think a lot of testers struggle with, is the adoption of efficiency processes and tools. And to me, that's the foundation for test automation, right? The teams and the members that are in demand in today's world are the people who understand test automation tools and applying them correctly, right? So to me, those sorts of two things are the core skill sets as well as responsibilities, where I need to understand the domain and I need to understand the tool sets that I can correctly apply and leverage to meet the expectation of having high confidence in the software that gets released out. At the very basic, 30,000 foot level, that is sort of what I would want my QE team to be focused on and help make the team successful. What are your thoughts, Mike?
No, I think that's spot on, right? So testing is, the better you know your vertical, and the better you know how your users are using the system, you can devise ways to be able to extract that into the testing process, right? And so if AI can help us better understand some of that, then we will know how to approach a release better, that will better hit risk associated with the release. So yeah, I think that is a lot of the impact. The toolings that are there that can come out that can help us get to that level is where that productivity benefit would be.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one item I'll add to, as you were saying, I was thinking about, right, was I think the general perception now, especially with ChatGPT, as I was alluding to earlier, was, oh, any response that we get from our chat conversations seems to be the gospel or the Bible, right? It's like, hey, this is the truth,
Yes,
and in reality,
it's
that's not true.
it's very definitive. It could be definitively wrong.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
very
Like
definitive,
it's
right?
it's the exact same thing with like, hey, any search response, is that all true, right? And I know there have been commercials in the past that have people portray and say that, oh yeah, everything you find on the web is true. And I think it's the exact same thing with ChatGPT, right? It's only as good as the data that it's been trained on, and of course, there's more data coming in and things of that nature. So where I'm going with that is there's no way that any of these AI tools will replace real knowledge. And for me, that knowledge still rests and is the responsibility of the members of the team to go acquire it, validate it, verify it, and then use that as your gauge to evaluate anything the AI tools do for you.
Yep, it's just a supplement, right?
Exactly.
But it is a helpful supplement, hopefully,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so, but yes, it's just a supplement. You're still the QA guy. You're still the strategy guy. You're still trying to, to, because only you know your vertical. Only you know your product that you're putting out. AI is not going to understand those aspects of that. They're not going to understand your timeline, your
Yeah.
release schedule either, probably, right? So there's a lot there that
Yeah.
So as we transition into the impact that AI is going to have in QA, there is something that I've in the few years that I've been learning about testing and automation. It looks like we started with manual testing. Then testing started evolving into automated testing, and the reason for that is because our software started getting more complex. So I've heard and I've learned that humans don't really scale. Software is going to continue getting complex exponentially, and humans will be able to take just so much responsibilities to test it. Software is getting more complex, especially and I think that would be one of the impacts that AI would have on not only software testing but software in general is making it so where people can develop software faster, and probably they are leveling up their skills to the point where they can actually make more complicated functions within the code or the UI interactions, etc. So one of the questions I want to ask you is like, so right now, do you think we move from manual to automated to now there has to be AI assisted or AI augmented automation because we need to keep up with the demand of this changing landscape, of this ever evolving complexity of software?
my opinion on that is, look, if you think about the risk entailed in software and how fast that you want to move. Let's say you want to move on a weekly basis, although teams are moving on a daily basis these days. But let's say you want to move on a weekly basis. But let's just go back to the week, right? Let's say you had a small team, but you had a big product. right? Now that happens all the time. You have a team of 5 people or 6 people, right? You have to be able to be able to do the base work. But and I think AI will help you do that, and things future things that are coming out like autonomous testing and things like that should help your productivity to get into that space. But really, what that's doing is enabling that team to go and focus on other areas of their applications, right? So now I can take those 5 guys, instead of all of them doing automation scripts, maybe I have 2 doing security testing, right? Maybe I have another guy just focusing on APIs and services testing, and different things, different aspects of risk that you didn't have the time to focus on before. So I think that AI gets rid of some of that work. So, or again, it doesn't get rid of it, but it helps empower you from some of that work, so that you can focus on some other aspects.
I think Mike is spot on there, right? The other thing, a thought that I have, right, is I always question the why, right? Like why is software considered so complex today, right? What is the reason that we are moving towards that trend? And I think for me, it comes down to the fact that it's all about competitive advantage, right? The reason why teams are building more complex software is to be able to evolve to the meet the demands of the consumer, right? Whether it's a team, whether it's a back office app, whether it's a consumer facing app, it's all about that evolving need of the user experience, right? And as Mike mentioned, right, it's where that user experience is adding those dimensions of expectations, right? Which is, I now not only have to worry about can it do what it's expected to do, is it secure enough, is it accessible enough, is it performant enough, and those are dimensions of testing that are, you have to build confidence that those expectations will be met, right? And guess who gets responsible for, again, leading the path to showing that yes, those requirements, those expectations are being met, right? It's the testers in the team, right? So I think
Yep.
those hand in hand go in sort of, for me, thinking about why is software getting complex, right? And then the flip side of that is, along with the higher expectation, the competitive edge is also about how fast can you do it versus your competitor, right? Because you want to be there as quickly as possible, right? And
Yep.
guess what? That translates to time pressures for, I think, an already complex process, right? With technologies, with, again, this dimensions of tests that are needed. Uh, Honestly, the distribution of the teams as well, right? We live in a global economy, so we've got teams
Yep.
all over the world, right? So that by itself has complexities built in by default, and add the pressure of speed to that, which is why manual verifications are not scalable, right? And then again, with those complexities, right, capabilities of software being built, one change, you have to also make sure nothing else violates your users expectations, so that adds to the effort that gets put in. And as a tester, as the human in the process, right, I don't want to be having to do all of the mundane stuff from start to finish all by myself. I would want to use tools that add efficiency, right? And that's where automation comes into a play, and hence dependency on that skill set, right? I think AI is the same thing. It's, to me, automation 3.0, right? It
Right.
stems from record and playback, basic scripting, right, to more complex capabilities of the technology and tools of today. And then for tomorrow, having AI take that almost like on an accelerated path of efficiency options for the team, right? So, as we were alluding to from, I think, our beginning of our conversation, it's not a replacement, right? And I know I've used conversations and context of like saying, hey, Iron Man and Jarvis in the past, right? That's essentially how I view AI coming to my help as a tester.
Sorry, Mush. So both of you have quite extensive background in software testing and quality assurance, and something that I'm very curious about is how do you think AI is going to revolutionize the QA testing process, not the industry, but the actual process of how things are being done or will start getting done now that AI is not a myth anymore, but is actually something that people can get their hands on rather easily.
Yeah, this depends on the mix of the team, right? And it really depends on the environment that the team is using, how they're using the tools that they're using, what the applications are that you're using. But I do see the potential more strategy, right? And less, I need a Java programmer or a JavaScript programmer per se, right? Less, I mean, they need to be technically aware. They need to be able to read code. They still need to be technical, but they don't necessarily have to know every aspect of every framework that's evolved in the last 3 years to be able to do something, right? They really, it enables them to focus out a little bit and look at the bigger picture and how do we strategically approach something. Because again, when you go into and it opens up different conversations, right? So for years you've seen automation people say, well, you don't need 100% test coverage in automation. And the reason why people would always say that is because it was too time consuming. And you'd have to go fix hundreds of scripts every build to be able to do that. And so you would say just automate the happy path stuff, right? That would be the mantra. But we're coming into a time frame where you could actually have, I don't know, at least 98% test coverage on against production and what your new release is. So I think some of those dynamics change, because you're enabled to be able to do more. So
Yep.
that's just a thought.
So
Yeah.
that
Yep.
is a very interesting point of view, and I'm very curious to see Mush's point of view from the practitioner perspective, because I know you're a very hands-on person. So I'm curious to see what do you think are the activities that are going to, there must be repetitive things that AI are going to pretty much take off your plate as a tester. Some others that are going to make you better at. So I'm curious to see from the practitioner point of view, what do you think how this revolution is going to happen, or what is the impact of it?
Yeah, yeah. So even before getting into the activities, right? I do wanna uh, put in a thought that is, I think a lot of people don't think about it this way. So that's why I wanna hopefully disrupt the thinking process here, right? I think AI and the inclusion of AI is going to empower testers more. And I think, contrary to a lot of marketing stuff that tool providers are putting in, where they are putting the message to say, oh yeah, we are getting this to be so intelligent that you don't need testers. I'm going to disrupt that thinking with an alternate thought process, right? The reason why I say that AI enablement is going to empower testers more is because it shifts, as Mike was saying, the dependency away from the technical know how and expertise back to the domain knowledge, right? And the way I look at it is as Mike mentioned, right? I don't have to be an expert in a particular framework or a particular solution. Absolutely, having knowledge and awareness and implementation experience with those tools will be a big advantage, right? But I am not restricted by it, right? So case in point, as Mike you mentioned, test coverage coming into play, right? Oh, I want 100% test coverage, I want 80% test coverage. What is the right percentage of coverage, right? And then the heavy lifting of saying, oh my god, I have to go maintain these scripts, right? And just in talking through those points, you see we've already shifted away from confidence in software to maintenance of scripts, which is nothing to do with the software that you're actually releasing, right? And what AI will, I think, enable you to do is redefine in the SDLC process what our definition of scalable automation framework solutions are, right? So case in point, right, would be if I have autonomous test generation, if somehow a product enables you to create scripts without a whole lot of heavy lifting from the human perspective, it to me redefines what I think of a scalable test automation framework, right? I currently with test automation define a scalable framework based on its ability to reuse code, reuse scripts, reuse test objects, because everything that I have to do to maintain it comes based on the effort that a human puts in for it, right? If all of that doesn't involve humans, do I really care what the definition of scalable is? Because at that point, those artifacts from a human effort perspective are zero. I don't care how the solution builds it out, rebuilds it, maintains it, validates it, right? I need to know what have they found, how does that translate into risk analysis, right? And all of those decisions truly come out because of my knowledge of the testing process combined with the knowledge of the domain and the system that I'm testing, right?
Yeah.
So keeping that in mind, it helps me, actually empowers me honestly to say my true value to the team, right, is back to say I don't have to do the heavy lifting with the mundane tasks. I can focus on really the value that the human mind brings with the combination of my experience and domain knowledge, right? So I think that's empowering, right? And to your point, Lucio, in terms of tasks, right,
Right.
I don't have to worry about regression ideally, right? I don't have to worry about how am I maintaining test data over a period of time as things change, as data gets stale, right? As new user flows are created, new business priorities are introduced, new features are overriding existing features, right? Take care of all of that, right? The other benefit is, hey, I have this test case created, or I have thought of this new situation that I want to test, right, based on new features that's developing. Can I simplistically put that into a user centric flow, and can the code automatically be generated, right? And we see that applied from software engineering as well, right?
Yeah.
Copilot Git is all the rage, right? Every provider, service provider is trying to use that, right? AWS is coming up with pretty cool names, Code Whisperer and things of that nature, right? But that would be awesome for us to have in our testing space as well, right? And that enables me not to have to keep myself abreast with like what are the basic inner workings of a solution, and let me focus on saying, hey, let me look at how we are intending to use the system, what its impact to the business is, and things of that nature. And that's the real value that testers continue to provide, automation or not, right? Automation is more of an efficiency builder, and I think AI is just going to add to that efficiency
The
concept.
task,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
the real value is okay. Or is this is this code ready to go to production,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Release readiness, right?
How do we feel?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
So we talked multiple times about offline and online, and I've heard you say, both of you, today, that AI really is not going to take the job away of the QA tester. And I want to dig a little bit into that, because I believe that as that the same way that it's not going to take it away, it's going to change that job. It's going to change the role of the tester. Can we talk a little bit about that, like how the role of the QA engineer, or the quality assurance tester, or the software tester, and how was it until there has been a shift since last summer to now summer 2023? How is that different? How is going to be the future, the role of the QA engineer, with the impact of AI?
The best analogy that I have been able to come up with in in terms of different conversations, right, is look at AI as an rock star or a superstar intern that you get,
Right.
right? I still need to make sure I understand the domain. I still need to make sure I understand the technology in use. I still need to understand the tech stack of the system being developed, right? What I don't have to worry about is, hey, can you start putting together ideas about how we want to test something that's coming down the pipeline? Or
Right.
hey, can we start off looking at how the system is being used currently? Or hey, can we start looking at what seems to be the typical bottlenecks and analytics around the uses of our system, right? AI to me can be a great sounding board to start those initial conversations, right? Just like
Hmm.
you would have an awesome intern to say, hey, go do the heavy lifting for me and come back to me with expectations that I have set for you regarding, these criteria, right?
Right.
And to me, that's the starting point of where I would start applying AI. So at that point, traditionally I would be the ones going doing all of that research, the analysis, the evaluations, all of that. I can get that, super powered and with speed and accuracy handed over to AI to give me back that information, right? So that would be one big change, right? The second aspect is, if you take one layer even more granular than that, right? So strategy is one aspect, right? I'm still the owner. I'm getting these ideas. It's giving me more ideas that I can build up on. I can tweak the assumptions. I can add to what that discussion is going and then finalize that, right? Then going down to the actual execution, right, of saying, okay, how do I take that strategy and sort of implementation roadmap and take it and go implement on it, right? That's where I think the biggest impact of AI will be, right? Is at this point, I know how to do it if I had to manually do it, but if I can get a tool to give me all of the underpinnings of all of that and set that up for me, right? So that way I can review it, I can confirm it's good, and help me build confidence and on the fact that, hey, the information that is coming back to me seems to align with my expectation, right? And keeping me in control to be able to say, nope, you missed these things completely, go do it again, or go add to these, right? Or change it around. Instead of me having to figure all of the doing part myself, if I can get that done in a matter of, seconds or minutes versus hours, right?
Yeah.
I want to use that, right? Then even going a further level below is like, okay, what are the dependency aspects over there? How can you point out things through multiple types of computations, right, that identify risk for me, right? And by the way, if I can teach you, here's my definition of risk, you tell me if that's a good starting point, what other recommendations you have. I'm still in control to say I accept what else you're telling me or I'm rejecting what else you're telling me. Go do exactly what I want you to go do. That's the next layer of where AI can help me, right? So you see how it sort of acts as the road building blocks, right? And then ultimately what all of that happens is I want to say, well, can you go do it for me, right? And
Hmm.
warn me or let me know what you find. And it comes back to me and then it says, well, here's the 5 things I found wrong, right? Based on prior information you've given me, these meet that criteria, so I'm alerting you on it. Oh, by the way, here's some other things that looked odd, didn't meet my, the trend I've seen, what you would expect. Or say that, hey, you know what? I've seen similar behaviors in other systems that led to a crash. That sort of insights help me stay in control and help me manage risk or see risk, but keep me as the core decision maker. Essentially, to me, what that does is it changes the mindset I have as a tester in a team to say I'm going to go do all of these things, to be able to say while AI goes and does the heavy lifting for me, let me talk and understand what else I need to figure out and how do I make my intern a
Right.
smarter intern, right?
Exactly.
And I think that is the shift in what we do today as testers versus I think what we're going to do in the future, right? We are going to be the coaches, so to speak, for the team of interns that we have, how do we feed them more accurate information so they get better with what they do? How do we evaluate and analyze the information we get that back from them, and how do we make the criteria for decision making better for them so they give us more and more accurate and more inline expectation wise results back, right? So then I can apply that into actions that I want them to go do again for me, right? In an ideal world, I think that's what I would ultimately want my AI tool to do for me.
Mike, what do you think?
That was a long-winded response. So
Yeah, so
It's all good.
I mean, I agree with that. A best analogy from my point of view would probably be a mechanic with a car, right? And so if you think of a mechanic and an engine, that mechanic is in charge of that car and that engine, and he has all these tools to help him figure out what he needs to do to that car and that engine, right? He can plug the little UB, what is it, UBF, I freaking
yes,
forgot the name of
the
it.
UBC, yeah,
UBC controller in, right? And the controller will tell him, hey, these are all the problems that you're having with your car. And then he knows where to go, right? He knows where to go on the engine to sort of tune that or to fix that problem. I view AI as that, right? Just being able to enable the mechanic to go and tune that engine a little bit better, to see where problems are starting to creep up, right? He'll be able to see if that cylinder's getting close to misfiring and enabling him to be able to service that whole car and that whole engine in an hour and a half.
Right.
So,
Is all
that
about
probably,
making us more efficient and accurate, and make sure that we get to. So what I'm getting from this is that
although
you
his
know
bill rate never changes. That bill rate's usually about $1,500 regardless. But
So what I'm gathering from this, and I hope the audience is too, is so I mean because we get this question a lot. We see AI, and I think there is so much buzz around it that especially when it comes to hands-on activities. I mean we're talking it can be I mean obviously we're talking right now about software testing, but it could be writing, content creation, you name it. There is like coding. There is a lot of stuff that AI can help us with. And it looks like right now there is this big explosion of like, oh shoot, hang on. We have been talking about machine learning for quite a while because this is not a new concept. This is statistics. So we talked from it evolved from statistics to data science to machine learning to now we're wrapping this whole set of features around the concept of AI and obviously generative AI, and which is what is helping us the most right now. But to Mike and to Moshe's point, it is not, and to the audience, to bring a sense of relief, is not going to take the job away. It is, I mean, there is definitely, and Moshe stated this very properly when you said there is a human sense to testing. You have to understand, and Mike, you said it too, you have to understand the intricacies of the product. What is it that needs to be tuned? What is it that needs to be tested? And at the same time, I am of the school of thought that it will help us be better at what we are. It's not like it's just going to go ahead and take stuff from our plate so we can go ahead and be lazier. I think it's going to open room for all these skill sets that we have been wanting to develop as testers, that because of the mundane click here and click there and do this and prep all these environments and do stuff, all that situation has been taking time from us. Whether I can go ahead and say to Musha's point, okay, just go ahead and take care of that, while I'll focus on something that is going to make me much better. Interns, if you are looking for a job, it's not going to be taken away either. It's going to make you smarter. So I think then again, to both of you points, is a tool in our toolbox and arguably the most valuable one, but definitely not a replacement. So I want to invest a couple of more minutes on let's transition into the topic of this is going to we talked about how this is going to transform the job of the quality engineer. Now let's go ahead and talk about the immediate changes that need to happen. So, or that uh, now one of the things that I mentioned just now is that it is going to make us smarter. It's going to open more room for things that we need to go ahead and focus on. Obviously, there is something that we need to do on our end for me, we need to be proactive, leverage that opportunity. What do you think is it that testers need to do to embrace this whole revolution and not to take it as something that is going to help them and not necessarily something that is a threat to them?
I mean, my opinion is they need to be, and it's some of the same attributes that have made good testers for the last 20 years. It's nothing new, really. They need to be open to change, and they need to be proactive in learning new things and learning new technologies and learning new things and practices that come out. They have to be vested in their discipline, right? Our discipline is QA, right? And so they have to be vested in things that help them do a better job from a QA perspective. Those that's just those are probably the biggest aspects that I can think of. There's all these tools out there and people out there that want to help you, and services out there, people that will give you free training and free. There's all this stuff out there, but it's useless if you don't have the desire and the desire to learn and the will to learn. And on top of that, I will also add that management needs that times two, right? So if because management needs it so that they can inspire their reports, their direct reports to have it, right? But a lot of times I see the flip on a management side. And I think it's just because so many companies hit them with so many different products. And they get, for example, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, used to talk about codeless, no code tools. And I would hear a lot of management just blow that off, right? Oh, I couldn't even get, again, management's usually 15 years before the practitioner, the actual tester. So when they talk about technology that's probably 15 years older than the actual guy on the ground. And so they would a lot of times you would see them not receptive to new things and new ideas, and they miss out because of it. The truth is, technology evolves. Technology gets better, and it's true. 1.0 of some tool maybe 15 years ago might not have been too hot, right? But that was 15 years ago, and yet, and so they have to have that mindset even more than the actual tester.
I'll add two things to that, right? Which I think in the portrayal of a tester, I think we already possess those attributes. I think I'll focus on what two should we continue practicing, right? As we embrace change, right? As Mikey mentioned, the first one I feel is continue being skeptical, right? The skepticism part is important because that's what makes us testers, right? Question, right? Just don't blindly trust, right? That's I think number one for me. And then the second one is always curiosity,
Hmm.
right? Be curious about trying to understand the how, right? AI is not magic. It's really it's engineering, right?
Right.
It can be explained, right? So keep practicing the curiosity aspect of our role, right? Is
Oh, I think those are great, Mush.
right.
Those are great.
So
That's
I
fantastic.
think those should be the ones we continue practicing because then what it ultimately does is the combination of skepticism and curiosity will help you build confidence in the tools that you're using, but then also very easily know its limitations, right? And yes, while everybody's excited about what AI can do, we all know it has its limits, right? It becomes dangerous where we don't understand where those limits should be, right? And that's the best way to keep be in charge, stay in charge, and embrace that change, right? As Mike you mentioned. So,
So we talk about the changes that or the activities that they should be proactive about, and you both touch on a couple of good points. Now, tactically speaking, for those who are listening, if they are practitioners, what are the skill sets that they should go ahead and start developing to in the process of being curious and skeptical and like Mike, what you said, in the process of embracing and devoting themselves to this career, what is a skill set looks like? What is it that they need to go ahead and learn?
I think the moment somebody says I've learned everything there is to learn, I think that's it. That's the beginning of the fall, in my
There
opinion.
you go. Yeah.
Right? You're gonna be obsolete in weeks, if not months. Right?
Right. But yeah, and I'm curious because we talk about, and I agree with you, we have to be skeptical of everything that is being put in front of us. I mean, at the end of the day, AI is going to be a product that is being generated by somebody.
Right.
I'm sure at some point we're going to get to the point where AI is generating more AI, and it's going to be kind of difficult to audit. But right now I mean, these data sets, all these parameters that are being provided to say things like ChatGPT are being curated and maintained by a team. So then again, I think we need to encourage people to not take it value phase, but like question what is behind all that.
Yep.
The thing is like, as a tester or as a developer, how do I get behind it under the hood and say, okay, let me go ahead and take a look at what is it that I'm dealing with.
So, so
So
in my opinion, though, Lucio, I think any good tool that will help you get to where you need to be in terms of adding efficiency will be a tool set that can explain to you, at least in their documentation or in the conversations you have with their solutions engineers or sales reps, to be able to at least give you guidelines around how they operate under the hood. Right? I know at Catalan we are very open when we say, hey, we built this Jira plugin. We don't say, oh, this is magic, just trust what it does. We tell them, hey, this is actually connected to OpenAI, right? And it's using the underpinnings, right? That explains stuff. When they say, how are you able to get such accurate results back, right? From, say, like, when you're trying to generate manual test cases, right? Well, what we tell them is we have figured out practically using what the prompts need to be when you
mm,
send your questions back, right? And we sort of, amplify that with a library of our own prompts, right? So sure, it may be a secret sauce. We may not tell them what is in that prompt, right? But at least the rationality of saying, well, here's how we are making it work, right? So
right,
you, as the audience, understand that. Now, obviously, for you to be able to get value from such discussions, you have to understand what is prompt engineering, right? How do APIs work, right?
right.
How do I read code? How do I read responses? What's the best way of putting in a prompt that I want superseded, right?
And I
Things
think
like
that's I think that's gonna evolve into like my dad always said, if he was a professor and he would say, I would prep my class for the first week of the semester. And then because it became repetitive, he said, I never worked again, ever again, because he had the class prepared and he knew what he was going to lecture people on. So I think is like the analogy to what you're saying now is that, and Mush, that I hope you don't mind me publicly sharing that you described yourself as a lazy developer because you always wanted to figure out a way to easier do things easier. And I
yeah,
think it makes sense, right? You become a prompting engineer. You learn how, and that's probably one of the skill sets that we need to develop as testers, is understanding how to properly and responsibly use AI. And what are the questions that I need to ask? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there using LLM models that they go like, this is not giving me the results that I'm expecting. Well, are you asking the right questions? Do you know what is the end goal that you need to go, that you need to achieve, that you want to achieve? So it goes back to, okay, so the analogy that I was making is you're going to, as a developer and as a tester, and I'm making an educated assumption here based on what you're saying that you will need to evolve on how is it that you're asking all these questions for your testing strategy
yeah.
so AI can provide you with the results that you're looking for.
Right, exactly. And I'll first off start by saying that I'm proud to be a lazy developer because I think it promotes a lot of new ideas. So I'm very proud of that badge.
Let's not call it lazy. Let's call it efficient. So you found the most efficient way to get things done. I mean, they say it all the time. Hey, work smarter, not harder, right? So, and
Exactly.
I think AI. I mean, joking aside, is gonna allow us to do that. Mike, what do you think? I mean, I'm curious to what are your thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, so I think the core skill sets are just a good testing mindset, right? Things that you look at out after a core tester, quite frankly, I would look for a really good manual tester, right? Because they usually have a lot of the system knowledge and they really know the application usually. And that knew some technical aspects, right? Or I guess you could call it technically aware.
Right.
So I think just core basic testing skill sets, right? But someone that can not get tunnel vision,
Hmm.
right? And think of the bigger picture of the bigger application, how that application interacts with your system, the rest of your system, and what our users are currently doing, right? And as long as they keep that trinity in mind, right? Our application knowledge, our system knowledge, and what our users are doing, as long as that holy trinity in IT are kept aligned, I think they should be fine. As long as they hone those.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd add to what Mike you mentioned is, I know we've been using ChatGPT as an example because that's what most people are familiar with in the context of AI ML, right? But
Yeah, and I don't like that, by the way, right? When people shouldn't be typing in things to Chat GPT and expecting, uh, uh, I don't know, rain to
solution.
fall out of the sky or something. I mean, that's a very dangerous
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah,
And so I wouldn't rely on that. When you see companies or products test, let's just say test product companies implement things around an LLM structure, it's not necessarily the same as going to ChatGPT and
yeah,
Right.
asking the same question, right? So it's a whole different. I mean, by the time it gets to the company level, the product level, it's already learned,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's learned how to learn to some
Yeah,
degree.
and I
So
think to me as well, an important reminder, right, is AI is not limited to just GPT, right? As you mentioned now, right? Like
That's right.
when
yeah,
I think of AI tools, it's bigger than that, right? Autonomous testing honestly has nothing to do with OpenAI from our perspective,
Right.
right? As an example, right? And we use while we use ChatGPT and its application, right, in intelligent quote unquote systems, right? We have to know it's not the only end all be all, right? There are other ways of implementing machine learning into helping our processes, right? And autonomous testing is another example for that. But I think coming back to saying, hey, what other tools and how do I prepare myself for the future as a tester, right? Is I would say continue learning, don't ever stop, right? Don't also be afraid of failing, right? So most people think of saying, hey, it's either the extreme end of saying I have to know exactly how it is. The one amazing thing with AI in the at least in the time lapse that we are in with AI is it's evolving. So we should keep that in
yep,
mind, right? That it's never going to be perfect, but it's not even close to that at this point, right?
That's right.
So use this as an opportunity to iron out what you don't know about it. Go learn it, research it, attend discussions. Hopefully, a lot of people listen to us talk about this, right? And know all of us are continuing to practice it, to hone down to saying what is that level that works in the context of the work I am doing or you are doing, right? And it's going to be different for everybody. I think the core foundation, I think what we are talking about that will make the most sense is going to be make sure that you understand how it works so you know its limitations, right? And
yep.
then get creative with how you use it to solve your mundane problems, right? Don't.
Yeah, and everything that you learn, you won't be able to apply,
Yeah,
right? And that's okay.
yeah,
That's perfectly fine. If you only apply 2% of what you learned, you just helped your team immensely with that 2%, right? So I know it took a lot of time and effort
Yeah.
to get that 2%, but that's 2% that nobody else could really have done. Yeah. I have a question for you, Mush. If you could make your envision what your next AI level product would be, what would that be for you?
I think for me, it is all about risk analysis. I think for
Yeah.
me, that is the biggest uh, pressure point when it comes to, saying if how ready are we for release. I think
Yeah.
that aspect, being able to raise my confidence of saying, hey, we know we have 50 bugs, but I have high confidence that 50 bugs are in an area that less than 1% of my audience uses, right?
Yep.
That level of eval would be awesome, because that's the kind of decision making we I would call it like informed risk
Yeah,
taking.
yeah. Good dashboarding, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
that
and
would
good.
be
I got you.
a key value add for me,
What,
to be honest.
how about you, Mike? Like the same question
You
back to
know,
you.
I can't get out of my head. I keep playing it in my head every freaking night for the last week, right? I want to see a bug in production and then go and take that bug and be able to automatically put it in Jira, automatically be able to get the test steps out of it, automatically be able to have the automation all the way up to the breakage point of where that bug was. So when they go back into testing or when that bug gets fixed, then you can just pick that back up from all the way from an automation perspective to be able to fix it. And so that helps from a reporting standpoint. Like, instead of someone calling a customer service desk and saying, hey, I found this issue. Well, you found the bug in production and the system automatically reported it. And so if that's all system generated, it's self healing from a different perspective.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm
So
I'm as you're explaining that workflow, the thing that comes to my mind is it's a it's a it's an anomaly detection that automatically can recreate itself.
right, and still the tester would sit there and say, "Oh, but before it's done, at the end of the day, it's valid or it's not valid or
Yeah.
whatever." Right, but the bug would be in Jira, automatically created. The script would be there all the way up to the breakage point, and you'd probably have a snapshot generated as well, right? And so some of that we can do today with some different tooling, but some of that you can't, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I want to say with Catalan, we've got four of the five steps you mentioned done. But the starting point is different, right? Where it's
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
Uh,
Great.
So in that into everyday tooling, so again, that goes back to the overall. If you view QA as somebody that is just kind of you can get into arguments on if this is a release manager's job or not. But if you get into QA as the overall holder of the system quality and hey, what's the status? What's the RPM of that engine under the hood, right?
Hmm.
If that's sort of a QA's responsibility overall, then it's. I always viewed QA as the holder of the SDLC,
mm,
right, and the guy that measures the SDLC and wants the SDLC to be perfectionist, right? I guess you can say SDLC perfectionist, right? Again, which goes back to that engine mechanic and the engine guy, right? He's the perfectionist in the engine.
yeah. So
So
okay, I think the other part that I think about, to your question, Mike, is it would be awesome to get like a real time gauge on some sort of an assessment or evaluation of also how good the test coverage is based on all of the activities happening during testing, right?
yeah,
A lot of the gap analysis, and I think it ties into the risk evaluation anyway, right? So maybe a preemptive companion, right? Almost like somebody guiding you along the way to say, well, you're still the hero of the story, doing all of the testing and being responsible for it. Any problems that you might have around you, let me make you aware of them preemptively, right? So you can address it before they become real issues. So, you know, while release readiness is how I was thinking earlier on, I think the other side of that is also, can you give me a good gauge and guidance and feedback on how well you think the testing depth and definition is, and that might be a bit harder to be able to get any quantifiable or valid data points against, but that, if it can be figured out, that would be pretty good as well to have.
Alrighty.
I kind
So,
of like that as it really. Sorry.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say I kind of like that as it relates to system monitoring,
Yeah,
right? And you get to load factors, right? You hit load percentages that are high, and oh, we're seeing this massive loads, but there's no way to automatically capture that
yeah,
kind of audit. You think of an audit
yeah,
mode, right? Capture that, throw that back into your normal STLC so that your tester on the front end or your product, your sprint teams or whatever, know that that's even an issue, right?
yeah,
And can effectively throw those into releases.
yeah.
So,
Thank you so much, Mush and Mike, for all your comments. Are there, as we wrap up this session, are there any last comments that you would like to offer to the audience on the AI topic that we touched today?
all I would say is that we're having great discussion topics on this in the Katalon community. Would encourage you to go to katalon.com and go to our community and engage and see what all the chatter is about.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and
Thank you.
what I'd like to add on that is, from a practitioner's perspective, I'm always curious about what your experience or specific use cases around leveraging AI, particularly around tasks that you consider mundane, right? And it would be awesome for those sorts of discussions also to be brought over to our community so other people can learn from it. And from a product perspective, it gives us ideas of saying, hey, here's another scenario or a use case practitioners face, and how can we help our tool solve those problems as well. So that would be an awesome conversation to have as well.
That
Wonderful.
would.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Mush and Mike, and to the rest of the audience. We will talk to you soon. Bye bye.